Hello, good afternoon. My name is Catherine Bruce. I'm with 2020 National Coalition Delegation. We are an informal group of delegates to the National Democratic Convention. And today we just wanted to share a little information with you about the platform. Now, recently we have had the release of a new 80-page platform. And we want to make sure that the public is aware of the release and just to share a little bit of information with you about what the platform says. So I'm going to share that screen with you. And here is a little bit about the platform. So I want to just lay out a little bit of this information so you know what the bullet points are for the platform. The time that you have to connect with the platform committee is very limited. Today is Thursday, the 23rd of July. And in order for you to get your feedback to the Democratic Party, you will need to reach out to your platform committee members. And you would do that by contacting your state Democratic Party to find out who those individuals are. And you can also contact those members of your Democratic Party in your state who are on the Democratic National Committee. So any of them will be able to inform you about who those individuals are so that you can share your feedback about the platform with them. So this afternoon, it's about 4:00 p.m. EST. So we want to encourage you to contact your Democratic National Committee members as soon as you can with any feedback that you might have about the platform in its current stage. There will be a meeting on Monday of the full platform committee to vote on this. So today is your opportunity to provide them with feedback. So let's look at a little bit of the Democratic Party platform. You'll notice here that there's information about the pandemic, and that is a critical issue that's affecting people around the world, but certainly people in this country. African American people are being subjected to negative impacts at an increased rate, at a disproportionately higher rate as well. So that is part of it. Building a fairer, stronger economy is the first of the platform planks. And you'll see that right on this page here. And the subheadings are protecting workers and families and creating millions of jobs across America, raising wages, protecting worker rights, work-family policies, investing in job creation, building a fair system of international trade, putting home ownership in reach, leveling the economic playing field, reforming the tax code to benefit working families, curbing Wall Street abuses, ending poverty, consumer rights, tackling corporate concentration of finance, and securing retirement. So those are the points under the fair economy plank. The next plank is healthcare. So under that plank is securing a universal healthcare option through a public option, bringing down drug prices, reducing healthcare costs and improving healthcare quality, expanding access to mental health and substance use treatment, expanding long-term care services and supports, eliminating racial, gender, and geographic health inequality, protecting Native American health, securing reproductive health rights and justice, promoting mental health, promoting LGBTQ plus health, strengthening and supporting healthcare workforce, and investing in health science and research. The next bullet is a broader protecting communities by reforming our criminal justice system. And those are not in the bullet, so we may take a minute to go in and look at that. We'll look at the next one, healing the soul of America, protecting American civil rights, achieving racial justice, protecting women's rights, protecting LGBTQ rights, disability rights, indigenous tribal nations, violence against women, ending gun violence, supporting faith and service, and supporting press freedom. We have the next plank is environmental justice. And again, that's a couple of pages, but we don't have them laid out here, so we'll visit that as well. Restoring our democracy. The planks there include protecting and enforcing voting rights, reforming the broken campaign finance system, building an effective, transparent federal government, making Washington, D.C. the 51st state, self-determination for Puerto Rico, supporting the U.S. territories, and strengthening the U.S. Postal Service. The next bullet, creating a 21st century immigration system. Again, that's not in the bullet points. We'll look at that briefly. Providing world-class education in every zip code. So the planks under that, guaranteeing universal early childhood education, supporting quality K through 12 schools, making higher education accessible, and providing borrowers relief from crushing student debt. And finally, in our foreign department, we have renewing American leadership. So under those planks, revitalizing American democracy, rebuilding Americans' tool of first resort, reinventing alliances, international institutions, foreign assistance and development, transforming our armed forces, ending foreign wars, securing our competitive edge, defense spending, keeping faith with our veterans and military families, civil military relations, mobilizing the world to address transnational challenges, global health and pandemics, climate change, technology, non-proliferation, terrorism, democracy and human rights, advancing American interests, global economy and trade, Africa, Americas, Asia, Pacific, Europe, and the Middle East. So these are the bullet points and the places to start. If you have an issue that is not listed in the bullet points, that is where you may need to immediately reach out to your state's members of the platform committee to make sure that they know of your concern. And you will need to do that today, which is July 23rd. So I did want to give you that brief. For those who want to stay with me as we go through the rest of the document, feel free to stay with me. Others can go ahead and contact your platform committee members with your state Democratic Party if you need to reach out to them now. Okay, so we do have a preamble, and you'll be able to see this preamble on the Democratic National Convention page, and you'll also be able to see it on you'll be able to see this document in its entirety on our 2020 National Coalition Delegation page. So we do have a Facebook page that's open to the public that we put this information on. So we're going to go ahead and look at some of the information for the pandemic. So one thing we talk about is insurance and the inadequacy of current insurance methods, as many people who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic no longer have their insurance. So what we have said here is that Democrats will take immediate action to preserve and expand health insurance, and that will mean expansion in Medicaid and reopening the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. And there's also information about how we will treat the public health crisis and pandemics in the future, and what the contrast is between what the Democratic Party will do and what President Trump is currently doing. So again, I'm not going to read this entire document to you, but I just wanted to comb through it a little bit more for some of the areas that did not have more spelling out in the bullet points. So we looked at the stronger, fairer economy. And here's the raising wages and promoting workers' rights, including looking at right to work laws, work family policies. And you'll see how there's more detail for each of the planks. So for each of them, you really need to come to that page and do a deeper dive into that. Investing in the engines of job creation, building a fair system of international trade, putting home ownership in reach, which also makes reference to home ownership, homelessness, and abusive landlords and lenders. Leveling the economic playing field, reforming the tax code, curbing Wall Street abuses, and there's reference to the Obama-Biden administration's Dodd-Frank Financial Reform Act, including the Volcker rule to protect American workers. Ending poverty. So in a couple of things we see here, the 10, 20, 30 funding approach, minimum wage of $15 an hour, healthcare is a human right, federal increases to food assistance programs, and the block grants, CDFIs as well. Guaranteeing a secured and dignified retirement with regard to Social Security benefits. Okay, so here's for the healthcare. We're talking about expansion of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Securing universal health care through a public option. Bringing down drug prices, making sure that Americans don't have to pay more for prescription drugs than in other countries. Reducing healthcare costs with essential prescription drug cost sharing, those kind of programs and policies which will make healthcare more accessible. Expanding access to mental health and substance abuse treatment services through Medicaid, and reference to the opioid epidemic. Long-term care services and supports, which include the child and dependent care tax credit, ways to help pay for long-term care. Elimination of the racial, gender, and geographic health inequities. So we talk about doing that by expanding coverage, government-wide effort with leadership at the highest levels to address the issue, expanding healthcare, and continued commitment to HIV/AIDS policies as well. Protecting Native American health, full funding for the Indian Health Service, securing reproduction health rights and justice, protecting Roe v. Wade and repealing the Hyde Amendment, federal funding for Planned Parenthood, promoting and protecting maternal health, particular mention of Black women and our likelihood to die from complications to pregnancy and childbirth, and expansion of Medicaid coverage to address that mortality rate issue, protecting LGBTQ health, and make sure that there's not discrimination in healthcare for these populations and full access to needed care, supporting and strengthening the healthcare workforce, making sure that there is a fair wage, and investing in healthcare worker care forces as well, and also closing provider gaps, and investing in health science and research. And here we have our protecting communities and building trust by reforming our criminal justice system. So some of the items here that we want to focus on, mass incarceration, reissuing federal guidance from the Department of Education and Department of Justice, so there's not disparity of disciplinary treatment of children in school settings, addressing the school to prison pipeline. It's also looking at how youth are treated and trying to find alternatives to prison and detention centers. Accountability for individual and systemic misconduct in the police departments, looking specifically at use of force, conflict resolution, and de-escalation standards, and national standards for these as well. Ending the war on drugs, reinvigorating community policing, and accountability as well. So these are the things in here. Diversity in ranks of police departments, eliminating use of cash bail, decriminalizing marijuana use at the federal and local level as well. Nomination and confirmation of federal judges with diverse backgrounds, commuting sentencing, eliminating private profit aspects of the criminal justice system, and redemption, which means eliminating ban-the-box programs and other blocking of programs like Pell Grants and nutritional assistance would be eliminated. The healing of the soul of America portion, protecting American civil rights, committed to ending discrimination, achieving racial justice and equity. So a comprehensive approach to make sure racial justice is top to bottom, eliminating poverty, closing the racial wealth gap, home ownership, voting rights, job creation. And there's a Black Lives Matter statement here, and also highlighting Black history as American history, removal of Confederate monuments from public properties, any vestiges of Jim Crow segregation, promotion of racial healing, examining the wealth gap, and we will fight to tackle intergenerational poverty, closing the gap, policies to end discrimination, unfair practices in the housing market, combating gentrification trends, low-income communities, strengthening the Community Reinvestment Act, making permanent the new markets tax credit, double funding of CDFIs, restoring and building the fair pay and safe workplaces policy, eliminating health disparities, providing affordable care options, healthcare centers, rural health centers, mobile health centers as well. So these are some of the things in that piece. Protecting women's rights will focus on ending pay inequality, Paycheck Fairness Act, and commitment to end sexual assault, domestic abuse, and other violence against women. Native American women, transgender women of color, all women. And also protection of safe and legal abortion. Protecting LGBTQ rights. Again, fighting to enact the Equality Act, public accommodations, jury service, federal programs, not discriminating with regard to any act, which includes adopting and fostering and attending to other family needs. And also committing to end the cycle of homelessness and violence against transgender and LGBTQ youth. Protecting disability rights. So again, reinforcing the American Disabilities Act, Individuals with Disability Education Act, Fair Housing Act, Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, and Help America Vote Act. All would be strengthened and reinforced. Holistic approach to supplemental security income and Social Security disability income to make sure that there is protection for the disabled and for seniors. Honoring indigenous tribal nations. And that would be done through pledging to increase economic development in tribal nations and protecting tribal lands, assets, resources, and treaty rights. So those are some of the items there. And also reference to the impact that COVID-19 has had on Indian country and the pledge to surge funding to the Indian Health Service and support investments to address the fallout of the pandemic. Okay, and investigating crimes against women and others, Native Americans, making sure that there is adequate access to insurance to improve health outcomes and educational outcomes as well. Make sure the housing needs are met through the Indian Community Development Block Grant Program, the new resources for economic development on tribal lands, increasing resources for the Native American CDFI assistance program, expanding and making permanent the new markets tax credit, and providing access to that to tribes as well. And there's also reference to the White House Council on Native American Affairs and commitment to hold an annual White House Tribal Nations Conference, and making sure that there's access for assistance to over 70% of Native Americans who live off of the reservation. So ending violence against women, expanding services for survivors of violence, expanding access to housing, legal assistance, and victim advocacy services. And we've heard of the national backlog of untested rape kits, so there'll be resources provided to make sure that is addressed, as well as ending revenge porn and other violent responses that we see in social media. Ending the epidemic of gun violence. So the commitment here is to make gun violence a public health issue and to ensure that the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention have the resources to make those studies. Also to close the Charleston loophole, universal background checks, ending online sales of guns and ammunitions, and red flag laws are all mentioned here, and holding gun companies responsible for their products. Supporting faith and service. Again, the separation between church and state that is enshrined in the Constitution, and supporting religious communities and making sure that they are secure, and also additional support for press freedom through the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Combating the climate crisis and pursuing environmental justice. This is, again, one of the points that did not have bullet platforms in the beginning, so we'll take a closer look at that. And of course, opening with climate change as a global emergency. So some of the points in here will make a connection between pollution, toxic sites, injustice, impacts on low-income communities. And all of these are things that have been seen more clearly through the COVID pandemic. So as a result, Democrats will focus on science and look at how to grow the economy and combat climate change at the same time, using a focus of federal resources and authority and the strength of the agencies to provide union jobs that attack these environmental issues, improving our energy, our water, our wastewater, our transportation infrastructure as well. The climate agreement, the international climate agreement, and also any lands, public waters that need protection are listed here. Focusing on what the public health experts tell us about achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible. Delivering clean energy infrastructure projects, and doing that through tribal areas as well as other areas of our country to create thousands of jobs, lowering families' energy bills. Also focusing on the California Clean Air Act, reducing harmful air pollution, zero emission alternatives. And a further commitment to clean air, clean drinking water, and living without fear to exposure to toxic waste, all of which should go without saying, but needs to be upheld clearly, as we have seen. Okay, and also making a connection between the racial and socioeconomic equity, and making sure the federal climate energy infrastructure projects are done to protect everyone's health and safety. And further, America's national parks and monuments, public lands, All of our pristine areas should remain pristine and be protected. So anything rolled back will be reversed. And protecting wildlife through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. The next section, restoring and strengthening our democracy, includes protecting voting rights, one person, one vote. And we've had a lot of talk about voter ID laws and how onerous they are, and making sure that the Voting Rights Act is strengthened. We'll probably, hopefully see that pass with the passing of John Lewis. The Help America Vote Act, addressing gerrymandering, increase investments to help update and upgrade election technology. Reforming the broken campaign finance system through overturning of Citizens United. Building an effective, transparent federal government through making sure that watchdogs are not interfered with, and that there's support for federal and hopefully state ethics laws, as we have seen. Financial disclosure, campaign finance and lobbying disclosure filings, making it easier for the public to access and understand. Making Washington, D.C. the 51st state for the 700,000 people who work there. Guaranteeing self-determination for Puerto Rico as well, and providing them with the access to everything that they need, especially after the disasters of Hurricane Irma and Maria. Supporting the U.S. territories, also the impact of Hurricanes Irma and Maria on U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, and American Samoa, being able to expand the response and making sure that they have self-governance and self-determination in those territories. And supporting and strengthening the vital U.S. Postal Service, making sure it has the funding that it needs to continue to provide a core American value. 21st century immigration system. So some of the comments in here, terminating many of President Trump's discriminatory travel and immigration bans, protection for dreamers, and continuing to make sure that LGBTQ persons who are unsafe in their home country, making sure they're eligible for asylum here. Addressing structural racism, reversing the enormous damage caused by the Trump administration, a roadmap to citizenship for millions of undocumented workers, and family unity as a guiding principle for immigration policy. Okay, providing a world-class education in every zip code. So that would be making sure that children, no matter where they live, are no longer shortchanged by a lack of investment in their communities. So guaranteeing universal early childhood education, making sure those standards are there. Increasing the STEAM education and supporting high quality K through 12 schools, providing the international baccalaureate programs and expansion of computer and mathematics. Charter schools originally tended to be publicly funded, but to make sure that public schools provide what is needed. And we have had discussion about private school vouchers. Democrats oppose private school vouchers, and other policies divert tax-paying funded resources away from the public school system. Making higher education accessible and affordable. Making sure that there's support for HBCUs, TCUs, and MSIs, double the maximum Pell Grant, double federal support for TRIO programs, making community colleges tuition free for all students, including Dreamers, increase federal support for childcare on campus, other wraparound services to make sure that students can come to school and everything that they need will be afforded. They will be able to afford. And the crushing student debt. Democrats will work to authorize up to $10,000 in student debt relief per borrower during the COVID crisis. And also take steps to ease the burden of the high monthly student loan payments for students earning less than $25,000. So there'll be some addressing of the interest for those earning less than $125,000. We support forgiving undergraduate tuition for those students. So various, improving the public service loan forgiveness program, forgiving up to $10,000 in student debt per year for up to 5 years. Renewing American leadership. I think this is our final portion. Rebuilding America's tools of first resort as diplomacy. So focusing on trying to rebuild and revitalize American diplomacy, which the Trump administration has decimated, I guess we could say. Reinventing and renewing alliances, American alliances. Repairing, reinventing them, and making sure they're rooted in shared democratic values. International institutions, providing the support instead of the retreat to groups like WHO, the World Health Organization, the United Nations Human Rights Council, and the United Nations Population Fund. Foreign assistance and development, further support for USAID, which is the U.S. Agency for International Development, devoting more resources to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and focusing on the work of civil society partners in developing international standards of transparency and sustainability. Transforming the armed forces for the 21st century, keeping the support for military defense, military families, veterans, and service members, ending forever wars. Some examples, the Saudi-led war in Yemen, the Al-Qaeda, and occupying countries and overthrowing regimes. Securing our competitive edge, another goal of the U.S. military, deploying the U.S. military to address these issues. Defense spending. Defense spending is going to be a rebalance of the investments, improving the efficiency and competitiveness of the defense industrial base with an attempt to end waste and fraud. Keeping faith with our veterans and military families to provide the resources that those militaries need, especially with regard to homelessness, mental health, senior services, services to women, and making sure that there's not abuse of women in military situations. Civil military relations are as well, noted as well in here. And finally, mobilizing the world to address transnational challenges, global health and pandemics. Again, that's going to be a partnership with such groups as WHO, revitalizing, expanding the Obama-Biden administration global health security agenda, restoring the White House National Security Council Directive for Global Health, establishing a global health emergency board, work with the United Nations to assist in public health crises, working with WHO, and providing a contingency fund for emergencies that will focus on vaccine accelerators, global affordable access to vaccines, therapeutics, and supplies. And climate change, rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, recommitting to Green Climate Fund, restore funding to the Global Environmental Facility and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the United Nations Framework Convention on Biological Diversity, all of which are doing very important work in projecting and predicting what needs to be addressed with regard to climate change. Technology is also mentioned here, biotechnology, net neutrality, and non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, partnerships to defeat ISIS and end terrorism, and democracy and human rights in the US and at home. So these are just some of the highlights of the document, the 80-page document that has been issued as the draft that the full platform committee of the Democratic Party will review and vote on Monday, July 27th. So hopefully this post will encourage all of you to reach out to your state Democratic Party leaders to find out who will be the people who vote on the platform in your state. That needs to be done today so that they can share that information, so that information that they receive from you can be summarized and shared back to the full platform committee in anticipation of their vote on Monday. So with that, I'm going to end this short recording, and we thank you for your attention. Those of you who are still with us, please check the 2020 National Coalition Delegation Facebook page to review this document again if you want to see it in print. Possibly a little easier than what we were able to show you today, but you'll be able to look at that at your leisure, but you don't have too much leisure because you do have to reach out to your state Democratic Party today, July 23rd, and make sure they have any of your thoughts or any omissions that you think are important that you feel need to be included in the platform. And again, this is a document, the platform is a document that will enable you to hold not just the Democratic Party accountable, but all of those elected leaders in your community at the city level, at the county level, at the state level, as well as at the national level, who wear the Democrat badge. So you will be able to hold them to this document and ask them to be transparent and accountable to you for those things that they believe in. So we appreciate your attention to this. We haven't quite gone an hour, so we spared you that. But again, my name is Catherine Fleming Bruce with 2020 National Coalition Delegation. I'm one of the delegates in the National Convention. We have a group of about 100 delegates from around the country and in some of the territories, and also in Democrats abroad, So we're pleased to bring you this information, and we hope that it will encourage you to be more engaged in the democratic process. Thank you and have a great one.